Hello everyone! Last year I wrote music for a game about a panda who is trying to become a ranger, and in this video I'm taking you through the composition and implementation process and different challenges I encountered on the way. The game has just released. I have been a game composer for a while now, and this is actually my first official full release, and I'm very proud of it. Together with the Steam release, I've also released the soundtrack on both Bandcamp as well as Spotify. If you like what you hear in this video, do consider checking out any of those things. Links are in the description. Dancing Pandas Ranger's Path is a cozy game about Miko, a panda who is arriving on an island trying to become a ranger. However, Miko is a little bit of a scaredy cat and needs to gain courage in order to climb the mountain and become a ranger. He gains courage by helping others, learning about the other pandas on the island, and getting out of his comfort zone. The gameplay takes us through three main areas that you need to unlock by gaining enough courage. You start at a beach and resort area representing summer, then you move up the mountain to a village representing spring, then you move further up to a forested area representing autumn, and finally you'll reach the mountaintop where something special will happen. The brief was for the music to be lighthearted but also profound and tell something about Miko and his journey. As Miko gains courage when he moves further up the mountain, the music becomes more profound and we can make more melodic and bold statements the further we move up. One final challenge we needed to face was that the music was implemented directly into Unity. This meant that our possibilities for adaptive and interactive music were somewhat limited because we weren't using middleware like Wise or Fmod. I ended up writing extensive implementation notes on which tracks should be implemented where, how long each one should loop, and this document was then taken by the programmer and she put it all in the game. For the structure of this video, it makes sense to start off higher up at the autumn area. Each area has a queue of about 2 to 4 minutes in base. For autumn, the musical idea was to make it peaceful and profound. This is the area where Miko has already gained quite some courage and is just taking his final steps to get to the top of the mountain. To achieve this, I chose to have a calm bed of strings in the background with harp accompaniment, where different wind instruments and French horn would take turns playing the melodies over. This is the area where we can make the most bold musical statements, so at times a full string section is taking over with a soaring melody. Then, moving down the mountain, we get to the Spring Village. However, it's not just a village. Every area in the game, including this one, has two sub-areas. So for the village, this is the village, and the nature area surrounding it. And in order to distinguish between these sub-areas, I wrote two different versions of each track. There's a couple of base layers shared between each one, but then different instruments come in and out depending on where you are. For the Spring area, there is a base layer of tremolo strings, low pizzicato strings as support, and some woodwinds. When we are in the village, we hear mostly shorter instruments to account for a lively inhabited area. Plucked strings and marimba provide a playful melody here. Then when we get to the surrounding area, we wanted the music to be a bit more peaceful and nostalgic. Here, the short layers drop out and the piano makes its appearance and takes over as a main instrument. I finally wrote this as two versions of the same track. So the chords are the same, the structure is the same, the length is the same. So when you move from one area to the other and we crossfade from one track to the other, composition itself continues, the instrumentation just changes. Then finally, back at the start, when you open up the game, we first hear the summer music. Classic beachy music, so I went for the bossa nova vibes with lively percussion and drums and, of course, steel drums. I'm also adding some flutes and some strings here and there to make it coherent with everything else that I'm doing in this soundtrack. And with this track, I want to highlight one final thing I did to avoid repetitiveness. I mentioned earlier that each track is about 2 to 4 minutes long, but you can spend quite a lot of time in each area. Every track in the game is therefore not looped once, but 3 or 4 times, depending on the length of it. I went into Cubase and edited each of these playthroughs, muting instruments, moving things around, and when necessary, adding little bits of extra material. These longer edits are the tracks that are actually looping in the game. This way we get much more leeway out of a short piece of music and can make it seem much longer than it actually is. Finally, Additionally, throughout all these tracks, I have hidden parts and variations of a main theme that you will finally hear once we reach the final scene at the mountaintop. This is where Miko has gained all the courage in the world that he needs, and he's now ready to become a ranger, but also to have a conversation with his grandma. This is a scene where the music is a bit more interactive and progressing based on what's happening in this conversation. However, I'm not going to spoil it in this video. You have to check out the game to see how that works. And this is something you can do. Dancing Pandas Ranger's Path is out on Steam, and the soundtrack is available on Bandcamp and streaming platforms. If you want to support me, the best way to do that is to check it out on Bandcamp. I hope you've enjoyed this little insight in the music of Dancing Pandas. I hope you enjoy the game if you decide to play it, and I will see you in the next one.